Hello everyone, my topic is all about emergent assessment. First, we must know what is emergent assessment. Emergent assessment is a model based on Michael Scriven's 1967 goal-free evaluation model. With emergent assessment, assessment is structured using effects rather than learning outcomes. This model honors the idea that you may bias your assessment by specifically defining what you are looking for. When you focus exclusively on a learning outcome, you may be putting on blinders regarding the effect that may be happening with the student's learning. This assessment model tends to be more qualitative in nature. Okay, why should I consider using emergent assessment? Okay, emergent assessment addresses concerns about inquiries shared by many disciplines, particularly those disciplines that tend to use more qualitative methodologies. Here are a few examples. Number one, there may be difference between explicitly stated learning outcomes and their associated implicit learning. So what does it mean? It prevents overlooking unintended outcomes, both good and bad. It focuses on what program actually does rather than what intends to do. Number two example, thus defining learning outcomes in testable ways after the learning outcomes and not always describable ways. With this type of assessment, the assessment process and learning outcomes are equally subject to evaluation as student learning. Number three example, are we sacrificing the rules of assessment for the goals of assessment? Are we sacrificing the process for the outcomes, assigning grades or writing an assessment report? Okay, this assessment method more directly takes students' needs into consideration than a more traditional assessment model. So, how can I develop a emergent assessment? Okay, profile the actual effects of instructional educational program against demonstrated needs of students who complete a course or program. Step 1. Create a profile of the needs of students who finish your course, graduate from your program that goes beyond what intend to deliver. Step 2. Identify effects of educational programs on students' learning using primarily direct methods considering both intended and unintended effects. Another, both positive and negative effects. Step 3. Compare the information gained in Step 1 with the information gained in Step 2. Okay? So what are some emergent assessment methodologies? Methodologies may include anything that includes a global comprehensive look of student, work, behavior, performance, attitude, and values to determine what effect the academic program is having. For example, writing samples, especially those requiring reflection. Number 2, interview or focus group with students. Example, brainstorming sessioning. Ecological observation of students engaged in work in a classroom. So, what are the critical effects we should think about when we are using emergent assessment? Assessors need to be competent in the subject of assessment. Yes, because it is important that the assessor is competent in the subject, because the assessor must know what he or she is teaching. Assessors need to know if when they see it. Assessors need to be aware of the conscientious of their bias. Ideally, the assessor would have no knowledge of intended learning outcomes, but this is generally not possible in assessment. Assessors do not look for effects solely through the lens of defined learning outcomes or intended learning based on course, program, and academic content. Okay? What sorts of the things should we consider when we develop an emergent assessment? First, we should consider the necessary instructive nature of this type of assessment. Is this appropriate for your setting, the culture or nature of your course or program? Also, this type of assessment can be very time consuming, both for the faculty, staff, and for the students. There is a need to be both candor and honesty with this assessment model, which may not comfortable for some people. Assessment with this model needs to be both balanced and unbiased. It requires the knowledge from the assessors of their natural biases.